Hey everyone, my name's Gabriel Mellan, these are my hands, and I work at Kid Museum. Kid Museum is a hands-on makerspace building confidence through creating. I'm going to talk about creativity and how to build a culture of creativity, but first I want to introduce you to Jackie Eyl.
Thanks, Gabriel. Hi everyone, I'm Jackie Eyl, Chief Program Officer here at Kid Museum. Today we're talking about Wild, Wacky, and Wonderful as a way to create a creative culture. That is something that we have internally on our staff, but it's also what drives us in what we create for our public. You can see in our public space here, Maker Playground, all of this happening around us. Our values here at Kid Museum are creativity, collaboration, compassion, and curiosity.
Okay, so the goal of the exhibits in Maker Playground is to get people pumped and thinking creatively about things. So once they do that, they come into our wood shop, cardboard studio, electronics lab, fab lab, textile studio, and a bunch of other spaces throughout here. And with that mindset where they are thinking creatively and innovatively, they can create a little bit deeper with more advanced tools. Let's go upstairs. Okay, welcome Flamingo Stairs. So the goal of the exhibits is to help kids think in their head that they can make stuff. That's the goal. Here's some mindset reminders to help me along my way, but we'll get to that later on. And then just 2 flights of stairs, but we do it so many times a day, we have the Made Up Workshop. Welcome to the Made Up Workshop, but it's not actually here. It used to look like this, but we put in a lot of time and effort, and it's over there. Let's go check it out. So, you know, you spend so much time at work, and I realized like the space where I spend so much time should be joyful. Kaboom, bananas on the door. You know what's up. Made Up Workshop, here we go. This is like the dusty area, loud noises, machines. Everyone on our staff can use all these tools for whatever they want, personal or for work. In here, we've got some everyday tools that everyone's allowed to use. Exhibit and process, Jake's workspace, idea spot. Kaboom, oh, joy. Talking about joy, ferns, extra joy, disco balls. This is my spot. Let me go over the foundations of how to build a creative culture so far. Okay, zoom in. Nope, not that much. There we go. Okay, so these are sort of like the prerequisites. Like you gotta have these in place before you even start to come up with rad ideas. I think that's the goal, rad ideas. Call it whatever you want, innovation, whatever jargon you got. But as I just showed you, the first one I've got so far is space. I just talked about a joyful space, so when you show up at work, you feel stoked. The other thing that I highly recommend is that moment when you got your own room as a kid, a dedicated space to spread out and make a mess. And that's important so you don't feel like someone's gonna jump in and mess with your stuff. So the third thing is that it's got to be organized. This is helpful for new people in the space so they can find what they might need or discover what they don't know they need yet. And speaking of stuff, you got to have stuff on hand. Kaboom, hand, get it? Cheesy, I know. So when you have stuff on hand, you can keep that enthusiasm going so you don't have to wait for something to show up. We accomplish all this stuff in our weekly shop meetings. That's a chance for us to talk about what's broken, missing, or how to make it more lovely. And that happens weekly, and I think that's a crucial bit. Next up, I have time. So I believe that we need big bites of flow. Creativity needs room, and uninterrupted focus time helps us feel more steady. This is like a big brain focusing activity, and that big brain activity needs some ramp up time. The other thing is time to play. This is when you're messing around with stuff and there are no expectations on how you play and what you play with. The next thing is you need time for project organization. Now for us, I found that having it physical in our space is really key, so we can see it wherever we are and we can easily add to it. It's not a very complicated system, and because we are a nonprofit, it's got to be cheap. You actually need a lot of time to sit and stare, and that's okay. It looks like you're not doing anything, but there's a lot being solved and figured out. Check it out.
Hey, it's Jake. So, third aspect of building a creative culture is what we call the spark. Now, for some people, this is a problem that they want to solve, like me. I need a prompt when I'm working on an exhibit or a new project, something that I can come up with creative solutions for. For other people, like Gabriel, this is a bunch of ideas that he can play around with. He grafts one onto another, and that's how he comes up with his own ideas for exhibits. For every person on your team, it's going to be a little bit different, and that's okay. You all need to work with your own creative process and come up with your own ideas. If it doesn't look the same for everybody, that's exactly what we have the team for. So figure out what works best for you, figure out how you like to create, then try and build that into your everyday workflow.
Boom, the spark. And the spark is really crucial, and I love that Jake mentioned that because I didn't learn that until Jake rolled up and taught me that not everyone thinks like me. Surprise, surprise, right? The last thing I've got is trust. So as I was reflecting on this, I realized that first you got to say it, because then you got to do it. And I realized that doing it is actually not doing things like getting in the way. Get out the way. Another way to build trust is to let failure happen. Don't grab the wheel when someone makes a wrong turn. Trust them that they'll get you there. This next area on trust is something that I kind of learned halfway through this last year. When I was dragging my team through these like heart check-ins, I realized that it was quite awkward. And they taught me, or they told me very directly, that, you know, we do this multiple times throughout the day. It doesn't need to be so formalized. And so that was an indicator that I had trust and that we were doing emotional check-ins throughout the day. So I think vulnerability is key for building that trust. If you exhibit vulnerability to your team, they can then feel that they are trusted by you, and they can then trust you with wild, wacky, and wonderful ideas. As you are being vulnerable and your team is being vulnerable, both with their emotions and their ideas, it's crucial that you don't do any trash talking. This quickly erodes team trust, and that's for anyone. If you're trash talking anyone in the organization, they'll think, well, are they trash talking me when I'm not around? Okay, so we talked about the foundations of creative culture. These are prerequisites to start the culture of creating. Next, I'm going to talk about these mindset reminders. These mindsets are helpful as you're creating, or your team is creating. Now, something I've learned a little bit later than I would have liked is that innovation is a bushwhack. It's not a sidewalk. So make sure you stay off the sidewalk. Come through the side door. I find that for me, playing with stuff helps me stay off that traditional path. Now, as I come up with ideas, I'm always thinking, I want to design it so cool, so badass, I would want to put it in my own home. So I'm not making stuff specifically for kids. Now, a lot of times when we break things, we think, oh my God, I'm failing, I'm not doing it right, but I often remind my team, like, if you're breaking things, you're still doing it right. You're still on the path. As we come up with ideas, I always push everyone to make a scrappy prototype as soon as possible. And having stuff on hand really helps that. When we do come up with prototypes and ideas, I've learned that I have to be careful in who I include in this, because too many opinions will dilute and deflate. When I get a little lost, I have to remind myself, and as an educator with kids, that your hands will figure it out. They kind of have their own brain. As we start to develop an exhibit, sometimes I have a big problem with this, is I always like to add things. So I've realized that subtractive solutions are something that really help me as I'm creating. And obviously failure is a massive part of innovation and inventing something that's never been done. So I always try to remind myself and my team that there's unlimited U-turns. You know, failure, you can continually fail and mess up, and you can do a U-turn. Okay, so I have to share one last thing, and this is my favorite word. It's a portmanteau of two words that I love. It's curiosity and mystery, and I think it's kind of the core of what humans are about. We love the things we don't know, and we're curious about them, and it's what drives us. So this is my absolute favorite word, mysteriosity. Okay, but did you really think I was gonna do another one of those transitions? you've had enough of that. Look, this is the end. We talked about the foundations of building a creative culture, and I'm figuring this out just as I figure out my hairstyle, because it's kind of in transition right now. As I've been making this video, I realize it's just about trust. You got to get there, because you're not going to go far if you don't have trust. So figure that out.